Unknown Mortal Orchestra 5 album review. Let's chat about it. Hey friends, what's going on? John here from What's Spinning here tonight to chat about this new double album from modern psychedelic rock and neo-psych outfit Unknown Mortal Orchestra. They've been at it for some time now. And they are a band that, over the years, I've had a lot of very mixed feelings on. Their debut album, their self-titled debut, I didn't think this album got enough credit. I mean, I don't think this album is perfect. I know a lot of people did enjoy it, but I thought this was such a fresh new look for modern psychedelic rock. I loved the lo-fi aesthetic and just how dreamy and hazy it was, too. It also had this playfulness to it that I hadn't heard in modern psych in quite some time. I just thought the album was really, really cool. And at parts, I thought their follow-up album, too, was even better. I mean, yeah, some of the weaker moments were pretty awful, but the majority of the material on this album was really, really cool. Now, Multi-Love showed a huge shift for Unknown Mortal Orchestra, one that I did not expect or see coming, or think that I would even enjoy in hindsight, as this album was much more electronically tinged. The production was sharpened up a lot more. There were some strong dance grooves on here. But they managed to keep their eccentricities intact, and it's an album that I really enjoyed at the time, and I still do really love. Now, the last time we've heard from Unknown Mortal Orchestra was with their Sex and Food album. It's alright. It's alright. I mean, there's tracks on there that I love. I mean, the adorable Honeybee, or the really groove-centered Major League Chemicals. There's some great tracks on there. But as a full statement, I thought the band had almost completely fallen apart on this album. And I should add, I've never been a big fan of their yearly SB EPs. I don't think I've ever really, truly loved one of them. And the IC01 fully instrumental album that they dropped a year or so ago, I mean, it had like one or two cool ideas, but I don't know. Overall, I thought they missed the mark on it. And leading up to this album, I had my reservations. It's a long album. It is a double album. The singles leading up to this thing were the definition of all over the place. But you know what? Let's chat about it. Now, I give credit where it's due. The first disc of this 14-track project is actually much more solid than I anticipated. Take, for example, this album's intro, The Garden. I instantly have to commend just how sweet and light this track is. It is so nice. In a lot of ways, it reminds me of what I loved about the band's early days. It has this dreamy film over it. The lo-fi production has certainly made a comeback here. The vocal lines are really infectious as well. I mean, this is a pretty ballsy intro to this album. I mean, this track goes over 6 minutes, but this is a long album, so I'm not too shocked. But it's really charming. I love the upbeat riff and this really memorable hook. I love this as an intro. As far as Meshuggah goes, I don't think you're going to find a better track here. I think this single is really, really good. I love how dreamy and sort of melancholy this track is, even though we get a pretty funky riff here. But the hook here, this downtrodden, heartbroken hook, is absolutely money. It's just catchy enough as well. Just catchy enough so that it doesn't take anything away from this album's very hazy aesthetic. Oh yeah, this track overall is a great modern sound for the band. The Widow, on the other hand, is a much bouncier, peppier track from the band. I honestly kind of needed one of these, and this is a really good one. And yes, it does deteriorate very quickly into a massively spacey, far-out jam. But honestly, especially on the first half of this project, a lot of the jams on this album are some of the band's better in years. They have purpose. They seem to just, have their focus set on creating a groove, and they do a great job of it. Like, is it wildly impactful or gonna, bring forth the next generation of Unknown Mortal Orchestra's sound? No, but, if I'm having a lazy Sunday and I'm trying to get some stuff done, I would not mind putting this on at all. Also, the jazzier elements come off really well and are very classy. In the rear view, I really like as well. I love the rainy day vibes of this track. It really does connect with the Unknown Mortal Orchestra sound. And it's not going to be for everyone. Once again, this is the jammiest they've been in quite some time. But personally, I'm nostalgic for this sound, and I would take this track over a lot of what it passes for a modern jam or modern psych. And this is like one of my favorite elements of like a good modern psych track. It comes off like they did it in one take, but it also shows that they have their heads on straight. There's some purpose here. It's great. I'm going to be honest, that life did take a little while for me to really warm up to. I absolutely hated it at first. I mean, it is light and probably the poppiest thing you're going to hear on this entire album, but it's also, honestly, really endearing and sweet, much like Honeybee was on their last album. It's got a strong groove to it, but it's also sunny and full of life. It puts me in a good mood, makes me smile. And I also like the very airy, very whimsical Layla, too. It's got an off-kilter groove and some very sunny vibes, and this hook is so simple, but it sticks with you. And the little jam that we get in the second half, it's just icing on the cake. This track is really nice. The only real blip that I have on disc 1, or the first half of this album, is Guilty Pleasures. This track is just a little bit too directionless for me, and this could easily be used as an argument against their sort of lo-fi aesthetic. I mean, everything else about this track just kind of fizzles out, doesn't really impress. This track plods along, this riff is boring, Ruben Nelson sounds literally like he's half asleep. It's a rough track, and a reminder that the slope is slippery with Unknown Mortal Orchestra. And let me tell you, the second half of this album made this review very hard for me. With Shin Ramyun, honestly, things get ugly very quickly. Honestly, on paper, if you really look at the details, there really isn't anything that stands out about this track that's wildly different than anything on the first half of this album. It's a steamy, dreamy jam, and if you like that, you might love this, but for me, the band's ideas are very quickly running thin. Like, this is just so lopsided of a track and not nearly as carefree or as sunny or sweet as anything else on the first half. The material on this second half very quickly starts to blend together. Take, for example, Weekend Run. This is just a little too hazy and too light for me. Like, the whole first half of this album, I was feeling nostalgic and enjoying myself and not missing the more groove-centered tracks from Unknown Mortal Orchestra, like on Multi-Love, or the guitar-driven tracks on Sex and Food. But God, right about now, I would take either one of those. And yes, it does pick up a little bit, but this track at the end of the day is so weak. I mean, it's endearing and their heart is certainly in the right place, but this track is another 5-minute jam. Like, there's over an hour of material here. Don't tell me this didn't need to be here. When it comes to the beach, I actually don't mind the riff at all. I think it's pretty cool. I don't think it's the worst track here. It's got a nice little groove to it. But my lord, the songwriting by this point in the album has gotten so far off the beaten path. And by the time that Kyukaha runs around, watch that. And by the time that Kyukaha rolls around, I feel like this album's actually just doing more testing my patience than anything. I mean, if this was an interlude on an album that was half as long as this, maybe, but right now, this was not what I needed to hear. And I Killed Captain Cook. I hated it when it first dropped as a single. I think it's the worst track here, and I don't have a lot good to say about it. I mean, what the absolute hell is this? This is beyond demo quality. I mean, like I said earlier, I was feeling nostalgic for the sort of dreamy lo-fi quality of this album, but right now, get it away from me. I am stunned. And this was a single. Baffling. And I had high hopes for Drag as a finale. I actually think the funky riff is pretty cool. Yeah, the groove is strong, and I do like the lo-fi aesthetics here. But the lack of progression here is what drives me insane. The woodblock alone, by the end of this track, is literally one of the most infuriating things about this album. And Ruben's asinine humming is not helping anything. I mean, it's not all bad on disc 2. I think Nadja is pretty good. It's a breezy acoustic ballad that has a lot of heart. I mean, I could have asked for a little bit more progression here, but there is something truly intoxicating and really endearing about this track. And the guitar solo here is absolutely one of the most soulful things on this album. Right on. Yeah, this album is really all over the place and a big letdown for me. I mean, the first disc, the first half of this 14-track, hour-long album, some of the most impressive material that Unknown Mortal Orchestra has dropped, at least in my opinion, for quite some time. There are many tracks in the first half that I could very easily see myself going back to many times. The drop off, though, and the lack of progressions, and just how thin these ideas get in the second half here, though, is just shocking. I mean, some of the tracks they released as singles should have been shelved, not promoted. It's a tough call, this album. I mean, like I said, the first disc is so strong, but there is such a slippery slope, a steep cliff in the second half that I can't excuse so much of this album. So for now, I'm feeling a strong 5 on this album, but let me know what you all think down below. If you like the video, be sure to give us a like, give us a subscribe, and let me know down below what you would like for me to chat about in the future. And until next time, have a great day, friends.